And I'd like to invite my colleague and friend, Katarina Popovic. Okay, so we've had the first round of presentations around, okay, environment sustainability, the role that we have in terms of global citizenship. The second part of the presentations are around the whole idea of citizenship education and partnerships with key institutions that Arjun has already identified, like non-government organizations or civil society. So Katarina is a professor of Andragogy at the Faculty of Philosophy, University of Belgrade in Serbia. She's also the president of the Serbian Adult Education Society and a member of the International Adult Education Hall of Fame. But most of all, she's a colleague and friend who works with me in the International Council of Adult Education. Katarina, can you share your slide, please?
Yes. Yes, I will. Thank you very much, Robert.
You have your 15 minutes, Katarina. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So thank you very much and hello to everyone. I was hoping that we will meet in the lovely city of Larissa in Greece, but okay, for this time, let's keep it in the virtual space, and I hope in the future we will have a chance to make it up. So I will share my screen now. Give me just a second. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes, can you make it?
Good.
That's it.
Perfect. Okay. As a matter of fact, Arjun gave me already a very good start. So many things he said apply also on the topic that I'm going to talk about today. So I will take his presentation as a starting point and just add a few additional topics, especially because I'm aware of the time. So now I will focus on citizenship education and NGOs, but civil society, but of course, especially in the context of the learning cities. So my thesis is that there is a kind of natural partnership between these two elements, NGOs and civil society in general, civic education, and the learning cities as the context. And I will try first to prove that with some arguments, and then to give you an illustration of that. When it comes to NGOs and learning cities or learning at the community level, well, it's in the history of civil society that they work, especially NGOs, they work on the ground level, in the local community, and not only work, they are even embedded in the life of the community. And it gives them the opportunity to tackle the needs of the people that they live together with, to motivate them to be able to outreach, especially those who are usually difficult to reach. And they're especially close to the vulnerable groups and to some of the burning social problems. So they are there where the real life and work of the people are. They also have the opportunity to connect the national and global policy, and Arjun was talking about sustainable development goals, so I don't need to repeat that, but they have really the opportunity to translate them to or other policies to the local level, to community levels, and that's the only way they can work also. Transformative education is also one of the key words, and Arjun mentioned that also. So working at the local level, so especially the work of civil society, gives a real face to this transformation. As a matter of fact, this is the only way that can make the transformation possible, that can make it work. When it comes to the civil society, NGOs, and lifelong learning, what we have as a very strong connection there is a holistic approach that civil society has to with the lifelong learning. They cover many sectors, and there are no artificial divisions between these sectors. They combine them in a very natural way. They also combine the stakeholders, different stakeholders, and we know it from a very nice examples also we saw today. Different stakeholders, various groups, they work across the barriers. They connect people of different ages through intergenerational learning, people of different sex and gender, nationalities, social status, and so on. So this is a powerful intersectoral work that NGOs are providing. They also bridge different kinds of learning, formal, non-formal, informal, again, in a very natural way and in a very creative and innovative way. And that's also how some of the formal providers of learning can learn from the NGOs about creative and innovative way to bridge these different types of learning and different learning sites. By the nature, NGOs are very flexible, they're adaptable, they can react fast to the growing needs or to the emerging needs, being it in a crisis situation, and you will see some illustration, or emerging needs of different target groups. So they're very close to the real life and they can react very fast and very flexible to the emerging needs. And when it comes to citizenship education, that's our main topic. Well, this is in the very nature of NGOs for several reasons. I will mention only the most important ones. Being non-profitable oriented, most of them, NGOs are able to to deal with citizenship education even when it's not mainstreamed in the public policies, and usually it's not. We know that public policies are very much about vocational education and training and other, of course, important topics. So somehow citizenship education, by not bringing profit directly, of course, they are not mainstreamed. Another reason might be in some countries that some authoritarian decision makers are not very fond of citizenship education because it has this potential critical thinking and open-mindedness and, you know, increased tolerance to differences, to diversities, which is not preferable by some decision makers. Also, NGOs and civil society in general, they're very close to the, as I said, to the reality of life and work of people on the ground, and in that way to their civic roles, to their civic duties, to their civic challenges of their civic lives. And also what we see today, and I believe there is no need to illustrate it very much, there is a growing need for citizenship education. I mean, just check around the pandemic crisis, wars, conflicts, raising authoritarianism, lack of tolerance, racism, xenophobia, and all other things. The need is drastically growing. And I think we are witnessing a shift right now, and COVID-19 is only reminding us of that. And this need cannot be satisfied without a partnership. So I'm really glad that civil society is considered also in this session as an important partner. So talking about citizenship education now, I just want to underline that we are shifting from this traditional understanding, and it was mentioned in the previous keynote speech, this traditional understanding of what is a good citizen, someone who is, you know, doing his or her civic obligations, go voting and these kind of things. So we are going beyond that, and we talk about the range of the areas that new understanding of citizenship education is covering: political, social, economic, social, human, environmental. And we are talking about few aspects. So it's not only about knowledge and information, about sharing data. It's also about competencies, being able also to do the things, but also be willing to do the things, change behavior and act in accordance to our attitudes. So it's about critical thinking, but also it's about agency. And I think this is one of the key words we should use. Develop people's agency to act for the values they believe in, for the values they share in a local community. So, and this is also, it was clear in previous presentation, I will very briefly now go through this one. So it has to do with awareness about environmental issues, but about the global impact of local issues, and of course, keyword COVID-19. So environmental issues are now integral part of civic education. It's not another area, it's not another topic, it's part of this. Civic education is culturally sensitive, but it's not selfish, it's culturally open. It's also global in the cultural sense, it's culturally inclusive. And now citizenship education includes the broad range of issues related to democracy, to the human rights, to defense against the rise of violence, racism, extremism, discrimination, intolerance, and so on. Very important, and it was mentioned, but I need to underline that, because of this neoliberal wave that whose consequences we see now everywhere. Citizenship education is global, but it's not based on competitiveness and selfish individualism. It's about new way of togetherness, new ways of being together. Ubuntu was mentioned, but there are also new practices. And within the civil society, we can see this range of different new practices that are based on new togetherness, new ways of being together, new ways of sharing common values in the local community within the learning cities and the context as well. Think local and act global. I believe this is now more valid than ever. And the citizenship education is now, by nature, I would say, global citizenship education. So a few reasons or a few illustrations how civil society and NGOs reacted to kind of global challenges we were facing, like financial crisis, just to remind you of that, migrant and refugee crisis, climate change, environmental degradations, pandemics, and I would just remind you that COVID-19 is just one in the rows, and we have swine flu and bird flu and a few others. So there are more and more reason to think globally, but to act also on a local level and really act. And I will show you, I have chosen to show you a few examples. First one is related to health. To illustrate why it's an inseparable part, integral part of a citizenship education, which NGOs are practicing, and the other one is about democracy and human rights. So it's an illustration from Cape Town when civil society, after the breakout of pandemic, arranged to help people through the community action networks and to bring them the necessary means for hygienic or food and so on. So this is from Pamoja, one of the ICAE members in Benin, when they organize different kind of groups, especially for those who are not online. Just yesterday on one of the webinar, we heard that 43% of people in Africa do not have access to electricity. So when we talk about digital learning and digital communication, let's not forget about those who are not online, and approximately half of the world is not online. So they were organizing these different events to raise awareness of people about the important aspects of pandemics. Again, South Africa, how the civil society combined the efforts to revive a local community center as a COVID-19 self-isolation site. So there were plenty of examples around the world. And now I want to go to another one, and you might surprise, now I'm showing COVID-19 in Serbia. And this is the first reaction our government had after the breakout of pandemic. And then I'm showing the other one. That's what the reaction of a civil society. So our government said now it's understanding, it's emergency. They proclaimed the emergency, but civil society reacted differently because the older people who are over 65, they had to, they were in lockdown for almost 2 months. They were not able to go out at all. So civil society arranged immediately to help those people and to bring them the necessary things. But they also did another thing. They were protecting some sites, some natural sites, because some companies try to use COVID-19 crisis as a moment, to disposal the garbage and to pollute the environment. So even under the circumstances of COVID-19 crisis, civil society mobilized and arranged some actions to protect the local environment. So it's also about, it's not only the health and the environment, but also about democracy. Civil society and NGOs in the cities, they were drawing attention of the people to the situation of the human rights and democracy during the COVID-19. Because there were many examples of violating human rights with the excuse of COVID-19 and pandemic measures. So now I'm moving to a theoretical, or reminding you of a theoretical concept of public pedagogy, and I mentioned just a few names here, like Giraud, Henry Giraud, and Gerd Biestra, and Elizabeth S. Lord, who are talking about public pedagogy as a new concept that brings together cities, and I would say especially learning cities, civil society as a mobilizer, and lifelong learning as a continuous process. So now learning moved to the cities, to the public spaces, and the public spaces became a new learning sites. Public spaces and the learning is also a new contact. new content of learning. Now we learn about democracy by doing it. Now we're learning about active citizenship by doing it, by practicing it, by going out, helping people, protecting the environment, doing other things that are important. And this is also a new method of learning. It's embodied learning. It includes action, it includes bodies, it includes emotion, mind, attitudes, and so on. So this is all now captured in this new concept, or relatively new concept of public pedagogy. And I think that's the one that will enrich our understanding of education and lifelong learning. So in that way, I'm just illustrating a few slides, civic movement. So this is similar to Occupy Wall Street. This is again from Belgrade. So for democracy, for the human rights, for freedom. This is another one for intercultural understanding, runners, a sport club from Serbia and from Croatia, two countries that used to be in war not so long time ago. So going out to the street, running, organized manifestations, performances, Occupy Cinema. This is against gentrification and similar movements. Again, this neoliberal investment and investments driven action. So against gentrification of the city. This is from Chile for the free education, against fascism and against authoritarianism. And the colleagues from Greece will recognize this from Athens for the women's right, civic movement and civic performances for the women's right. So to finalize, NGOs are in that way, and civil society in that way, contribute to the new understanding of the learning cities that includes public spaces and the new learning sites and new learning method and the contact, but they're also contributing to the new practices of citizenship education, moving away from this traditional, oh, go out, be vote, do vote, be a good citizen and believe in democratic values, to more action-oriented and of course more globally. Thank you very much. I hope I kept it within 15 minutes.
You covered it within 15 minutes. I am amazed. And so with such rich pictures and examples. And so I think at the heart of your presentation is we don't learn to become global citizens. We learn by being global citizens. Thank you very much. So I'd like to welcome our last presenter, Mr. Taehwa Ha, head of Gwangmyeong Lifelong Learning Center. If you could please share your screen to be sure, and then test your microphone. You have Mr. Taehwa Ha? From Gwangmyeong, yes? Hello?
네, 안녕하세요.
Hello.
네, 광명시. 네.
Okay. So, can you hear me?
You have your 10 minutes, Mr. Ha.
오케이. 네네.
Okay. In our Gwangmyeong city, in 1990,
There it is. Okay, thank you very much.
네네.
Okay. In our Gwangmyeong city, for the first time in the Republic of Korea, we have also created and initiated the citizen education, and we have 21 history of the citizen education. For the citizenship education with the NGO, we have a lot of cooperation, and I would like to mention many things, but today we had 6 examples, and I'm going to show you shortly. The first is this year, under the title of Democratic Civic Education, we have a topic. I mean, this is a topic that we have formed up of a plan in order to understand what citizens wanted to actually learn from. So we have assigned an expertise group. So we have conducted a survey on the democracy level, and also we have conducted the enhancement of a citizen project, and also private public network and other public network. And these were the things that we have initiated and inside the Gwangmyeong city. In order to create a democratic citizen education center, we have made such an effort. Next slide, please. So in order to cooperate with the Gwangmyeong and other NGOs, including YMCA, YWCA, and other education, solidarity, and economic citizen activation practices, and the small libraries were the organizations that we have collaborated with. Next page, please. The democratic education at Gwangmyeong City was a part of the broader plan of the democracy and citizenship education plan. And also, we have conducted a survey what people actually wanted to learn and how much the level that the people have in terms of the democratic level. So this is a citizenship education program. This is not from our city, but for the organization and other civic groups, if they want to have a education program, and if they do suggest to us, then we do apply and then we allocate a budget to them. So the citizenship education improvement program is like similar to that. It's not the NGO groups, but for the individuals and also a member of individuals can form a group. If they do apply to us, then if we do see any wrong things or problem, then we do allocate the budget for them to conduct their own project. So we can make the NGO groups to sustain themselves with their own feet. So next I'm going to introduce to you again, what you can see right now is the collaboration between the City Hall and the NGOs network. And there is a consultative body called a network of the citizen life learning thing. So there is a regional life learning committee, and there is a working group committee, and the other is a review committee. So there are three committees. So all these committee will review the program. This is a public-private collaboration based on the MOU between these two entities, and this is some of the examples that we have actually built. Next. And these are the pictures showing the actual program that we have carried out. We do sometimes form the expertise group, and also we do have a cooperation program between the working level part and the civic groups. And also we do develop some resources for them as well. NGOs and civil organization, and for the democracy improvement of them, we do provide some education program. But due to COVID-19, we had to have a thorough prevention measures taken. And even though that was a very tiny meeting, we had conducted an NGO meeting called the Thanks to Mothers. And there was a family meeting. So as this is a COVID-19 era, so rather than the offline, but online, we had a discussion on how we're going to respond to the COVID-19 and how to improve the civic educations and also democracy education. Next. Next page, please. As of now, Gwangmyeong City is serving as a hub via the Lifelong Center, which is located on 5th of our building. And at the entrance, as you can see from this picture, we do conduct the prevention measure here taking place. We do check the body temperature through this screen, and also we control the log of the entrance and those who are exiting. So we are keeping and ensuring the quality control of the prevention of the COVID-19, and we are conducting the education program at the same time. That was the case of the Gwangmyeong City's education on civic and democracy. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And I think one of the things that we draw from that really is this whole idea of citizenship action and democracy. And so thank you very much. And so we've got a few minutes for the final round with the speakers. There are a few questions, and I invite the speakers, if there are questions that you can answer online, and please chat online. But I'd like to have a last round, and if the translators, again, I appreciate the translators are working very hard. Can we give them a round of applause again for the translators? What we'd like to do, and a few messages, given we have 7 minutes before the end of the session, what I'd like to do is, having heard the different presentations from Arjan's conceptual work around citizenship education, the different sites, the different areas where this is happening, to the examples that we saw in terms of the urban lab, okay, the examples in Yeonsu-gu of the Women's Academy, and then the role that NGOs play in this in terms of democratic citizenship. Is there one lesson that you would like to give to our audience who are also learning cities, who are also working in government, in local government? If you have one lesson that you would like to share about the link between citizenship education, so this is the one for the translators. Can you give us one insight about the link between citizenship education in terms of sustainable development and learning cities, and the role that partnerships can play? So I'm going to start from our Mr. Taehwa. Can you give us one insight that you would, if you would like to give our participants one lesson to take away, what would you share as the most important lesson around the link between citizenship education, okay, linking to sustainable development, learning cities, and the partnerships? Thank you, Mr. Hua. I hope I'm being translated. I tried to.
네, 저희
First, I want to talk about our case in Gwangmyeong City. There's many things. There's one thing that I want to mention to you is that when it comes to the NGO and the civic education, from the perspective of public organization, we need to wait. We need a patient. That means without setting a time and encouraging the participant to do exactly in that time frame, rather than that, because the civic groups, they have different levels of capability and a situation. So we need to give enough time for them to have a different results that coming from different times. So at this, but virtually and above all, the achievement will be produced. So when we do support, the executive bodies must have a patient and wait. Then we can reap a good fruit from the NGO, I think.
Hey, well, I think that's excellent insight, because often when we think of curriculum in school, at the end of this period, at the end of this time, finished. What you're saying is, as executive bodies, and I really appreciate that, we need to be patient, because learning takes time. Partnership takes time, but the achievement will be valuable. Thank you very much. Katarina, you're next. Any one insight from your perspective in NGOs, partnerships, the linking between learning cities and citizenship education? Katarina?
Yes. Well, as a matter of fact, I just typed it in the box, but it's good also to comment. And it shows that it has to do with the transformation. And it shows that there are good examples, but they are based on the different set of values. And that's exactly the point. The business as usual, like, oh, we include a few more topics in the curriculum, or we share more information, that's not enough. It has to go deeper. It has to go to the structural and systemic issues in order to understand what's going on. And the countries or the regions who did it, they were quite successful. So it was beyond this, I use the word macho in terms of, this competitiveness that we have taken from the neoliberal approach. So we are competing the virus, we are competing the other countries who also have the pandemic, who is better and so on. So the softer approach based exactly on this kind of values like solidarities, being together, supporting each other at the local community. So not only be isolated, stay at home, so okay, stay at home, take care for yourself. I'm afraid that pandemic is driving us to this kind of isolation and selfishness, egoism. So the countries or regions who act differently, who were taking care, but not only for yourself and your own like family or household, but also for the others, they did it better. And in those countries and regions, governments and civil society were cooperating together because they were sharing these values. The others who were using or misusing pandemic, to push for these values who are not really democratic, so they had some worse consequences. So just
thank
briefly.
you. So again, it's interesting how we're changing from the first lesson about patience, and now we're saying the softer approach. There are other approaches that address the same problems, and therefore another way of thinking, another way of learning. Okay. Thank you very much, Katarina. Do we still have our deputy mayor for Susungo, Mr. Sung Ju Hong? Is he still on the line?
합니다. 네.
I think there is a technical issue, so bear with us a bit. Is it okay? I mean, okay. Is it all set? So can I talk right now? Is it everything set now?
네, 저희도 사실 네, 글로벌
Well, when it comes to the global economy for women, it took a lot of time, like a decade, and through the education, we made the civic or citizens to act, but it was really challenging because the target was women rather than participating in the community because they were focused on their houseworks. So these people collaborated, and to develop into a sort of a community level, we need a lot of efforts. But what I feel personally is that when it comes to the environmental sustainable development and the sustainable development, the learning city and the local municipality must just support for them to develop rather than just providing education, but let them to act in the region and to form the community. And as an NGO, for them to engage in this community level, so we need to have a sustainable support for them. So that was very valuable lesson that I have learned. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Again, we're starting to see you don't start with what they want to learn, you start with what they are already doing. And so again, a valuable role. Women are very busy. What can they do in work? And you've given so much examples in terms of the way they care for the environment. So thank you very much and good luck with your work. Okay, I'd like now to go to the next Joanna, from your perspective in Gdynia, is it Gdynia?
Yeah, yes.
One lesson takeaway.
Okay, thank you. So I would say that the lesson that we've learned for now is to act now and think about challenges, not crises and problems. As well, remember to try to link those who are not matched together. So be a little bit of city matchmaker and think cross sectors and use dialogue as a method. And that's what I would like to share and the lesson that we've learned right now.
Thank you very much. And it's interesting for us as educators to listen to people in local government who speak in terms of your own perspective of learning. And so last but not the least, the person who started the conversation, Arjen.
Well, I must say, I find remarkable the kind of the convergence, almost consensus that I see in all these talks.
Yep.
That the dialogical is becoming more important, that we focus less on maybe having some kind of program or plan or prescriptions with learning outcomes that we want to kind of compartmentalize and then teach in ready-made chunks. That approach is clearly not one that is being advocated here. It is about having faith and trust in community and people, and also having a belief that dialogue and the more deliberative kinds of interactions can lead to positive outcomes where we do not always know exactly what the outcomes will be. So it's also emergent. It's a sustainability citizenship or global citizenship is an emergent property of interaction, which has underneath a kind of moral compass of care, of concern, of working together, of solidarity. And that's also very strong, I think, in all the presentations, that we must also talk about values, talk about the moral compass, what's driving us, and what keeps us from becoming who we want to become. So how is our lives being shaped in a way by the structures, by the technology that kind of reproduce a particular way of living that is not sustainable. And we must recognize that on a dead planet, there is no citizenship, there is no health, there is no democracy. So let us also not forget, and those are my last words, that we must be mindful of the ecological boundaries and the life support systems on this earth, and that we cannot be too anthropocentric. We must also learn to become more ecocentric and biocentric. And that is maybe the next step that we need to develop more strongly, how to connect and relate to the non-human world. That, I think, is an important perspective that we need to also learn to understand better, and how can we cultivate these kinds of connections. Focus less on the behavioral change, focus more on the spaces, on the environments that invite diversity, that invite dialogue, that invite solidarity, and so on.
Thank you very much, Arjun. And so with that, I think in the end, this is this whole idea of the emergent. We want to transform, but often when we think of transform, it's like, what's the prescription to transform? But rather the transformation is the transformative process of learning. I think it's that emergent that we create it. But I think what you're saying is we create it together. It's not just in schools, it's not just in universities, it's in local government, it's in cities, it's in our local communities, it's our women, it's our mothers, it's okay, all the people, and again, it's civil society. As Katarina said, it's a natural partnership. And this natural partnership is led by policy, but it's also led by values. And with that, I thank again the two cities that have brought us together today, Larissa and Yeonsu. And so I'd like to thank Arjan, I'd like to thank Joanna, Mr. Sonju Hong, I'd like to thank Katarina and Mr. Taehwa Ha for your sharing of experiences. I wish you all the best from Australia. I wish you all, I work with some of the learning cities here in Melton and also in Windham. And so we wish you all the best in promoting lifelong learning together. We shall bridge into the emergent, into the future. And so I'd like to turn over now to our hosts. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to chair this panel. And I wish you all the best. I clap for everybody. I think I say kamsahamnida. Is that the way to say thank you in Korean? Thank you very much. So who's formally closing our session today?
Thank you, Mr. Roberto Guevara. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, now the session 2 will commence at 13:30 Central European Time. So see you then. Thank you.